Hello, you're watching 6 News on this Sunday evening. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. The top stories we're following right now. COVID cruise ship, the Majestic Princess, to begin its next trip after more than 800 passengers with the virus disembarked in Sydney, with those on board now speaking out. Horror crash video shows the moment two planes collide midair at an airshow in Dallas, Texas, in front of hundreds of spectators who were there to honour veterans. Hacking the hackers, the AFP to work with international agencies to target scumbag criminals, and the government to leave all options on the table when it comes to expelling Russian diplomats amid the ongoing Medibank cyber attack saga, and independent candidate Sophie to challenge the Victorian Electoral Commission if they reject her how to vote card that leaves some boxes blank ahead of pre-polls opening in the state election. Good evening. The Majestic Princess is out of New South Wales and has begun its next voyage less than 48 hours after at least 800 COVID-positive passengers disembarked in Sydney. Princess Cruise Line says all new passengers are aware of the prior cases and strict COVID protocols remain in place. It comes amid a fourth COVID-19 wave and rising cases ahead of summer, with one passenger on board the cruise ship who tested negative now speaking to 6 News about how the outbreak unfolded. Portling and Holmes has more.
For many, the COVID-19 situation in Australia was over. But as New South Wales declares a fourth wave, there's new fears about the spread of the virus in Australia. The Majestic Princess cruise ship is now set to begin its next trip, starting in Melbourne after departing from Sydney, where thousands of passengers got off, including at least 800 with COVID-19. 6 News has spoken to one Australian passenger on board who does not have COVID. He's told 6 News that by day 8 of the 12-day trip around New Zealand, which began on October 31st, all the wait staff in the restaurants were wearing face masks. By day 9, all crew members were wearing masks, and it was strongly recommended that passengers did the same. An instruction to wear masks indoors was made on day 10, with most people doing so, and he started to notice people coughing. And finally, by day 12, all passengers were told to take a rat, following directions from New South Wales Health. His partner tested positive, but he tested negative and was allowed to move around the ship. It's believed this outbreak is the biggest amount of cruise ship infections since the Ruby Princess in 2020. A statement from Princess Cruises released overnight said there were a range of strict rules in place to keep guests and crew safe. New South Wales Weekly Update on Friday saw almost 20,000 cases revealed, with close to 1,000 in hospital. Lincoln Holmes, 6 News.
Recordings leaked to The Guardian have shown Queensland police staff at the Brisbane City Police Watch House joking about beating and burying black people. The audio and comments, which 6 News has chosen not to republish in full, included the comment, "Let's just hope Ebola works in regards to African population growth," and one officer speaking about, quote, skull-dragging protesters during a discussion about Black Lives Matter and Extinction Rebellion protests, among other remarks. Watch House officer Stephen Marshall submitted the audio to Queensland's Commission of Inquiry into Police Responses to Domestic and Family Violence. The federal government says all options are on the table when it comes to potentially expelling Russian diplomats over the Medibank cyber attack saga. Attorney General Mark Dreyfus says it's the government's preference to maintain diplomatic channels, but, quote, diplomatic profiles must always be consistent with our national interests, end quote, after it was revealed the hackers were almost certainly from Russia. The Australian Federal Police will now work with international agencies to target the accused hackers, who have been labelled scumbags, with the AFP also launching a permanent joint operation with the Australian Signals Directorate in an attempt to hack the hackers. Let's turn our attention now to a developing situation in the United States. Video has captured the moment two planes collided mid-air at an air show that was honouring veterans in Dallas, Texas. Video taken from multiple angles shows what appeared to be a smaller plane colliding with the tail of another one, with both crashing into the ground just seconds later in front of hundreds of spectators. US correspondent Jackson Gosnell has the latest developments.
Leo, a lot of families at this event. Obviously, as you mentioned, Veterans Day here in the U.S., where so many people remember our fallen heroes, and that is exactly what was happening at this air show right near Dallas. People were out there just paying their respects to the veterans, watching an air show, and obviously this catastrophic event unfolded, which really scarred so many people. People were just upset. I saw videos of them crying, shouting, just a really horrific scene, and officials say that counseling is available for people who were nearby watching this, given the severity of the situation.
Can I ask, because I actually saw there was an air show crash earlier this year, on a separate one, and we see them actually happen a few times, and collisions and the like. Are they something that is fairly popular enough? Because despite all these collisions we've seen before, they seem to keep going and they keep happening right across the US.
I wouldn't say it's very common. It may seem that way given the headlines and you see it when it happens. But remember, the news is an exception from the norm in many cases. And I would say most of the time, these things go on without incident. Even here in Greenville, where I am based out of, there are air shows from time to time or flyovers and so forth that always go without incident most of the time. But once in a while, you'll have a catastrophic incident like this. It will dominate headlines, and people will begin to get an idea that perhaps this is more common than they think. But I really don't see it that way. I think this happens very seldomly, and it's extraordinarily rare.
And just explain to us, in terms of these investigations, who's responsible here? Is it Texas authorities? Would it be the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration?
Yeah, so Texas authorities were first to respond, obviously, but the Federal Aviation Administration, as well as the NTSB, will take over the investigation. They will be the ones to release who was on board, how many people were on board, all the specifics related to the crash and what led up to it. The FAA and NTSB will be the ones to announce that. I was watching a news conference just recently where Texas officials were basically saying they had to hold off on their higher authorities to deliver that news.
It's certainly shocking. I'm going to keep covering that for you. Jackson, while we've got you here, the other big thing happening in the US right now is there's a lot of anticipation as we wait for that announcement from your former president, Donald Trump. That is expected on Tuesday night, your time. That's 1 p.m. in the afternoon, Australian Eastern Daylight Time on Wednesday. What are we expecting he's going to say?
Well, I think the announcement is quite obvious. The 2024 presidential run by Trump has been teased for months. It's highly anticipated by Republicans, and I think it's all but certain that that is what will happen on Tuesday night. He will announce his candidacy for president in the upcoming presidential election. Whether or not Biden runs, that remains to be a mystery. Biden has indicated that he would, but he's also kind of given some answers that seem as if he wouldn't. So nobody really knows, but obviously the candidates probably do. But there's also some challenges within the Republican Party that Trump would have to work through if he did run, because it is highly anticipated that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis may also announce a presidential run. Obviously, he just won his another term as governor there in Florida. So a lot to talk about in the political scene.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, and we'll keep following the US midterms and this Trump announcement, and of course, what's happening in Dallas, Texas. Jackson Gilsnell, thank you.
Thank you.
The Victorian Electoral Commission's investigation into a donation scandal involving Liberal leader Matthew Guy's former Chief of Staff Mitch Catlin will not be finalised until after the state election. The Age reports the VEC is looking at whether Catlin requested a wealthy Liberal donor make more than $100,000 in payments to his private marketing business, a claim that saw Catlin resign. Now the Electoral Commission, which says it's making no allegation of an offence at this stage, says it will not rush its investigation in an attempt to complete it before the election, and therefore would not be finished until after November 26. And the Victorian Premier has been heckled by a United Australia Party candidate while speaking at a synagogue in Melbourne. Video posted to social media shows Southern Metro candidate Leon Kofmansky, who identified himself to 6 News, telling Andrews that we will not forget what you did to us last year.
We won't forget what you did to us last year. We're not for sale, and it's taxpayers' money, it's not your money. We're smashing around.
Leon spoke to 6 News a little earlier.
He's putting on a charm offensive because he wants to win votes. It's a very cheap way, and he comes into our community, strides in like the Pied Piper, throwing bags of money at institutions. And unfortunately, look, throughout the community, we all despise this man. But unfortunately, look, like in every community, we have a minority of rogue elements who have taken the bait and given him a platform. Dan Andrews wants to win the seat of Caulfield, which is the heart of the Australian Jewish community. The Liberal incumbent, David Southwick, was very close to losing that seat in the last election, 2018. There's a really good chance that he might lose in this seat, and Dan Andrews is throwing everything to try and win this seat. And I thought it was important for me as a Jew to go there, even though it was a minority of people. He went to a venue on the eve of our Sabbath, and the venue could fit to about 200 people. There were only 25 people in attendance. This just shows you how despised he is. No, majority of people just ignored the event. But I decided to come there to take a stand. I thought it was very important as an observant Jew and tell him that that he can't buy us out. What he's doing is unacceptable. We won't forget what he did to us in the last year, and we're not for sale.
There were a lot of people, though, when I saw it posted, and I posted about it last night, thought it was just, a random person in attendance. But of course, you are a political candidate. You are running in an election. Is this not just a UAP stunt?
No, it isn't. I feel quite strongly about it. And actually, the reason why I'm running the UAP, I wouldn't have thrown my hat into politics if it wasn't for what this man did to our community in the last 2 years, what I've personally witnessed. This is the reason why I'm standing for politics, why I'm standing as the lead candidate for the upper house in the Southern Metropolitan region. And if people want someone that has the courage of their convictions, that will stand up to tyrants like Dan Andrews, then on election day, please go out. If you live in the Southern Metropolitan area and the Caulfield, Sandringham, Brighton, Paran districts, there's 11 districts in total. It covers most of the Southern Metro region. I would strongly encourage you to vote for me. So I'm doing it from the heart. It's straight from the heart. I'm running for real change. And if I'm successful, all credit goes to Dan Andrews and what he's done to us in the last few years.
What is the point of it all, though? I mean, it's not like Andrews can really, heckle back. Is it just, looking for some kind of fame here? Some kind of attention to just, yell a few words in a 15-second video and then just leave it at that? Why not, put that effort into campaigning or something?
So what I did, I went there on the eve of the Sabbath. I didn't come there with a camera. It was someone else that filmed me. Ironically, it was one of the event organizers that filmed me and publicized this. I wasn't expecting, this was on the eve of the Sabbath. I don't carry electronics, cameras, videos. So I wasn't doing it to get publicity. I wanted to do it to make a moral stand. That was pretty much it. I was surprised after a Sabbath was over, where I was able to use electronics, to see that not only was it filmed by one of the event organizers and then publicized, they were probably trying to humiliate me, but it looks like it's backfired. But it's it's attracted a lot of media attention. That's really surprised me, and that wasn't my intention.
Penny Wong has issued a warning to the coalition, saying they should not weaponise Australia's relationship with China for political gain. The Foreign Minister says the government wants to stabilise relations with Beijing because it's in the national interest, adding, "We won't weaponise national security for political purposes," according to The Australian. Minister Wong also said that the China of today is not the same as the China of the 1970s or even the 2000s. Some may prefer to pretend otherwise, but President Xi Jinping has himself made that very clear. Back overseas, the UK says Russia is likely to have destroyed roads and bridges during their retreat from the port city of Kherson in what's been labelled another strategic failure for Moscow during the Ukraine war. That comment coming from British Defence Secretary Ben Wallace, who tweeted that in February, Russia failed to take any of its major objectives except Kherson. Ordinary people of Russia should ask, what was it all for? British authorities say there is a, quote, realistic possibility Russian military equipment and forces in civilian attire had been evacuating in conjunction with the 80,000 stated evacuated civilians in recent weeks. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says the retreat was a historic day, with hundreds seen celebrating in the streets. Emergency services have been forced to rescue people from cars and houses after heavy flooding in eastern Spain. It happened in Valencia after a major storm with trains stopped and airports temporarily shut down. Video posted online shows cars trapped. The BBC reports the same region saw heavy flooding back in May as well. Returning now to the Victorian election, an independent candidate for Q, Sophie Torney, will challenge the Victorian Electoral Commission potentially in the Supreme Court if they reject a how-to-vote card that leaves some boxes blank. It comes just hours before pre-polls open in the state election, with the seat of Q being held by outgoing Liberal MP Tim Smith. 6 News spoke to Sophie Torney and started off by asking why she's taking this action.
It's a really important part of being an independent is that my how to vote card doesn't dictate anything to do with preferences, because I'm not part of the party system. So the fact that the VEC have said that we have to number boxes is not acceptable. So we've interpreted the legislation correctly, and we think the VEC are frankly wrong.
I've seen some other how-to-vote cards from previous elections from independents, and they've used things like they've said just vote one and then number 2 to whatever in your choice. They haven't explicitly shown blank boxes on a mock ballot paper. Can't you just not show that, and then there wouldn't be any issue here?
The blank boxes, is that what you mean?
Yeah, on the mock ballot paper that you have on the how-to-vote card.
We don't want to number the boxes. I want to have the blank boxes because it just indicates that the voter is free to put down the preferences they want, which is actually how it works. So that's what I'd like to show, because that is the clearest way. And we know from evidence that that has worked in the federal election in the seat of Kooyong, where the informal vote was the lowest in Victoria, one of the lowest in Victoria and Australia.
So by what you just said there, it sounds like you're not accepting the argument that it could cause informal votes?
Not at all. The legislation is very clear that either you show a how to vote card with the numbers boxed, with the boxes numbered, or you state very clearly on the how to vote card, make sure you number every box. And we absolutely comply with that. The example given by the VEC as an alternative is actually even more misleading, where it just shows a single candidate name with a 1 next to it. That is not going to, that's not going to be a better option at all.
Of course, the other thing is the big issues seem to be COVID, climate and corruption. But if we look at Q more broadly, I think, a lot of people, even just outside the electorate, they think of the person who is not running being Tim Smith. They think of what happened with that car accident. Do you think that is going to affect how some people choose to vote and maybe draw votes away from the Liberals, given how, scandalous, if you want to use that word, it was when it happened last year?
Absolutely, that would be a contributing factor. I've definitely had people approach me and talk about that particular incident, but generally that this seat has been a safe Liberal seat since time immemorial, since 1927. So the behaviour of our local MP, the behaviour of the Liberal Party in various scandals over this year, particularly with the legal counsel resigning over integrity issues. There've been quite a number of issues that I've had a lot of Liberal supporters come and talk to me about, but it happens on both sides of politics. And I've had people coming to me generally every day just talking about the lack of honesty and accountability in politics, and they want to see it change.
And just finally, on honesty, we've seen it across a number of seats where, so-called teal independents like yourself are running. I've seen it in Hawthorn, Caulfield, Mornington, and then also in other seats, just again, against general independents. The Liberals are claiming that a vote for an independent, a vote for Dan Andrews, or a vote for a quote-unquote teal party is a vote for Dan Andrews. What do you make of those claims?
To be honest, I think it's a little sad and desperate. I think if that's all they've got, that they're arguing against, I just don't think it washes. I mean, this electorate, you've got to give the voters some credit. They're pretty smart and savvy. They saw what happened at the federal election. They want true representation. They want their voice heard in Parliament, and that's what matters to them. I think that is a very fringe view that's just not widespread here.
It's going to be a very close campaign right around the state and in Q, but we'll leave it there. Sophie Torney, thanks for your time. Best of luck.
Thank you, Leo, and happy birthday for yesterday.
Thank you very much. And 6 News will have live coverage on election night from 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time on our YouTube channel and our website, SIXNewsAU.com. That is on Saturday, November 26. Changing pace now, wet weather has threatened to derail the T20 Cricket World Cup final, but regardless, fans are turning out in Melbourne to see Pakistan take on England. Senior reporter Darby Travers is there.
Well, the T20 World Cup is due to be underway here at the MCG, a match between Pakistan and England. Pakistan did get in after defeating New Zealand, while England smashed India just a few days ago. The Aussies, well, unfortunately, they didn't make it into the semi-finals, with their attention now directed towards the start of Test season, with the first of 2 matches against the West Indies beginning on November 30th, before 3 further matches against South Africa, one including on Boxing Day. Wet weather concerns have, though, affected today's final, with rain here in Melbourne throughout today and expected into next week as well. Despite this, tens of thousands of cricket fans are attending. England is ahead in some of the betting odds as both teams look at getting their hands on that World Cup trophy.
Darby Travers there in Melbourne, and now is Ivan Melly in Perth with what's coming up later tonight on WAMN News.
Thanks, Leo. Tonight on WAMN News, asbestos risk, safety concerns over mishandling of dangerous wastes in Perth South. A WAMN News exclusive.
Brace for impact. Nurses and midwives to stop work next week as wage negotiations remain in deadlock.
Pauline Hanson touches down in Perth for another supporters meeting blitz.
Doctors advise masking up again as the number of cases is set to spike before Christmas. And later, Dr. Andrew Miller's comment. Join us tonight on the WAMN News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Alright, thanks both Darwin and Melly there. Now taking a look at tomorrow's weather forecast right across the country. Brisbane partly cloudy, getting to a top of 31. Similar conditions for Sydney there, 27. A chance of some showers in Canberra, 16, with that rain continuing across the southeast. Melbourne getting to 19, while it'll be 16 down in Hobart. Heavy showers in Adelaide, 16 there, while it'll be sunny in 29 in Alice Springs. Perth to get to a sunny top of 25, and in Darwin a warm but wet top of 33. A reminder of the top stories we're following on 6 News this hour, and the Majestic Princess is out of New South Wales and has begun its next voyage less than 48 hours after at least 800 COVID-positive passengers disembarked in Sydney, coming amid a 4th wave of the virus and rising cases ahead of summer. And videos capture the moment 2 planes collided mid-air at an airshow that was honouring veterans in Dallas, Texas. Footage shows what appears to be a smaller plane colliding with the tail of another one, both crashing into the ground just seconds later in front of hundreds of spectators. And that is 6 News for this hour. There's more news 24/7 on our website, SIXNewsAU.com, and on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Lit. Just search 6NewsAU to find us. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.